Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Sunday night breakdown. Dan Routledge and Dave Forrester with you. Pleased to say we've had a full slate of games to go through, so let's crack on. We'll start back on Tuesday night. Seems a lifetime ago, given how many games we've managed to get through this week. But Leicester Raiders 71, Newcastle Eagles 76. Eagles through to their first cup final since 2017, having been, you were 6 in a row when you were there at that stage. So it seems like a drought to go a few years without a cup final. Close game. Eagles led for much of it. Really came down to that shot that Gordon makes late in the game, hits a three, puts his team up, and Leicester couldn't quite respond.
Yeah, it was obviously the third time they played each other, and when you add in the fact that it was a cup game as well, cup semi-final, it was really the first time they played each other properly, because it was a big game. You know, the other two games were competitive but not the same, so they had a little bit extra knowledge of each other, and then they had the stakes on the game, which meant that it was really very much cat and mouse. Ultimately, the game came down to the benches and the benches of each team. For once, Leicester's bench really didn't contribute to the point whereby they had to go back to their starting five with about 7 or 8 minutes to go in the game. And that's very rare, because normally Leicester finish with at least 1 or 2 of their bench on.
7 points off the bench, but it wasn't really about the points, I don't think. I think Washington was below par, Anderson was below par, and you normally guarantee those two to give them something.
Yeah, I think like in the game, Jamel was minus 14, Connor was minus 12, something like that. In a close game, you know, you're surprised with that when that happens. Yeah. What it meant was it gave Leicester some problems down the stretch, because like they had against London, they were a little bit short of offense down the stretch. So in this game, I think they scored 7 points in the last 8 minutes or something of that nature. And if you look at the points they scored, 3 of them were foul shots. Crandall made a nice 12-footer in the lane, and one was a tip-in of a missed shot, of a scrappy play. And the difficulty that I think they have when they have that kind of bigger starting lineup on at the end of games is shot creation, because it comes down to Crandall. And if you watch the last few plays of the game, because you're quite right, it all basically comes down to the last few plays of the game. As you say, Gordon makes a big 3. Then I think Edwards makes a play and there's a foul shot. But the last 2 offences of the game for Leicester, the first one, Crandall makes an unbelievable play, gets in the lane, he gets kind of cushioned on the baseline, and he throws it behind the back pass almost, kind of a pass to Nelson Henry, for what should be a layup. But because the Eagles know that everything's going down there, Gordon has come off with his man on the corner, and he swats Nelson Henry from behind.
Yeah.
And then then it becomes a 4-point game with 30 seconds to go, and because Rob wants a 3, which is sensible in those situations, he calls a timeout. He runs a play for Corey Johnson to come up off a double screen on the baseline. And Eagles are able to take away the 3, and then you're left with Corey Johnson having to penetrate. And he had to dump it off to William Lee, who was cutting. He had to shoot a tough shot and missed, and Eagles got the rebound. That's the game. So those little things, not having Connor on the court at that point, impacted Leicester. It made it harder for them to score. But it was the right call because of the way the game was done. In relation to Newcastle, Gordon made the plays at the end of the game.
Edwards all the way.
Edwards is, I mean, we've seen from Edwards this week in particular, the level of comfort that Edwards has. And we'll get this with a couple of the other games, but the level of comfort he has playing with Fletcher.
Yeah.
The level of comfort Fletcher has playing with Edwards.
Yeah.
Is palpable on the court. And Edwards is as clutch a player as there is in the league. If you go back to Worcester last year, he beat us a couple of times in the clutch. And we've seen it all through this week. So
it was one of those in the summer. You saw the signing, and you thought, "Oh, that could be pretty good, couldn't it?" With Fletcher and Cortez Edwards in the backcourt, and it actually has delivered what we thought it might.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a result of the league changing to 4 Americans. Because this time, I remember I was involved this time last year, and we recruited Rodney Glasgow because we wanted to have another creative guard playing next to Fletcher, because he is such a good scorer. He's not just a passer. You don't just want him standing there and throwing the ball to somebody else. You want people creating for him, and also him being able to create for himself. And because obviously it's 4 Americans this year, you have the opportunity to sign then Edwards, Gordon, and Maxwell.
Yeah.
And there's probably the extra guy.
Yeah.
You know, which allows you to have those two guys. And you look at, in particular, Edwards' play when Fletcher is off the court is pretty impressive. He's able to take over the team. So yeah, it was a great win for Newcastle. It was one of those games that could have gone either way. I think Newcastle's a little bit more experience won it in the end. Because if you look at the guys that are on court for the Raiders at the end, they're all pretty young. They're all pretty young pros. Crandall's a second year, Jackson's a first year, Johnson's, I think, a second year, Nelson Henry's a third year, Lee's a second or a third year. And just because you're wearing the vest, it doesn't mean you've got the experience.
Yeah.
The players have to go through it themselves, and sometimes you've got to lose those games. You've got to be in those games to lose them to get to your next step. So yeah.
Well, as we move on, just one stat of note: Newcastle 19 points off turnovers. You can't do that against them, particularly in a 76-71 game. That's just way too many, and that's what they want to do, and you have to take it away from them.
Actually, one more thing that I should give Newcastle some credit, because defensively, compared to their performance at London the week before, it was night and day. They were flying all over the court. They were packing the paint. They were getting out the shooters. It was kind of a level that they have to play every week defensively. If they can do that, then they've got a chance.
So let's move on to the Friday night games. Worcester Wolves 73, Cheshire Phoenix 71. 15-point lead with 5 to play, and then Ross drags Phoenix back into the game. But I mean, to me, all of that happened, and then the final play of the game, Mulliam sort of runs out at him as if there's 0.4 of a second rather than 1.5 seconds, I think it was. And Elam just goes past him and has an easy mid-range in the end.
Yes, but I'm not going to put too much on Mulliam, because I want to know where the rest of the team is.
Well,
because the moment that if there's 1.5 seconds, he might have 2 dribbles, he might have 1 dribble. What he hasn't got is a catch and a pass.
Yeah.
He just hasn't got that time. So the moment Elam catches the ball, Worcester are 5 out, so everybody else is out on the perimeter. Yeah. And if you look at the Cheshire players, they are literally standing next to their men. They're spectators.
Yeah.
All it takes is one of them to drop in, to take that away. The guy who's defending the pass, the inbound pass, maybe he's not in the play anymore. The guy on the weak side, he's not in the play anymore. So yeah, it wasn't probably the smartest defense from Mulliam, but I think he's entitled to say, look, I'm stopping this guy getting a shot away.
Yeah.
Where's my team?
Yeah.
It was almost like it happened in slow motion. The crazy thing was, it's the first basket Elan's made the whole game.
Yeah.
And to be fair, he made a tough play, and he finished. But as I say, it's one of those things where you're just expecting a whole team to just collapse on him. The moment you put the ball on the ground, everybody's like, it's like they're frozen in ice.
Yeah, I actually put a stopwatch on it because I was thinking that was 1.4, and I timed it at 1.25, so he does get it off. In time.
Literally 1 dribble per second and a little bit, So I mean, I didn't think there was much. I heard it was 2 seconds, but even so, the other thing about that game is there's 2 things about the game. One is Jordan Williams is playing out.
We'll skate over the 8 turnovers, but 24 and 9.
He turns the ball over because he gets the ball so much. Yeah. Because he's the decision maker for that team, and he accepts the responsibility of taking decisions for that team. And so, when he is aggressive, offensively in particular, he's probably the most effective British player in the league at the moment. Yeah. And they're playing through him. Which is, he knows how to get to the rim, he knows how to get the ball where he needs it, and he's able to kick the ball out of the double team, which is the critical thing. Yeah. Everybody can score one-on-one, but can you make the right decision? Yeah. So he's carrying those guys a little bit. And the second thing is, Cheshire don't quit.
No.
They don't quit, but they're not. They've had so many personnel issues over the year. Now, Dizzy's out. They're constantly, Farrell Gordon's back, they're constantly brought in Kyle Carey, they're constantly looking for a balance and to get to know each other, and you see that they're still learning each other, but they don't quit. And to come back from 15 down in a game where they could have said enough's enough.
Yeah. Particularly with 5 minutes to go as well. It's one thing to come back from 15 in the first half, but to do it in the last 5 minutes, and we'll get into them again in a bit with the game today as well.
Yeah, well, Ross and McCall, if you're not aware of what they do and what they are trying to do, and you're not properly scouting what they're doing and making a formal effort to take it away, they're going to keep their team in the game.
Still, there's something still. We'll probably another week get into a discussion about the Wolves overseas contingent as they sort of mesh in, but it seems to be different guy from week to week.
Yeah. Well, Kimball struggled in this game. Kimball was like 0 for 9. Lawson relatively quiet. Parks
was efficient, wasn't he?
Yeah, he's an interesting chap because there's not interesting chap. Sound very English. Sorry. No, there's not many late. He's kind of a little bit old-fashioned insofar as what he is. He's a wide body.
Yeah.
So those of us who remember big Billy Singleton, he's a bit more athletic than Billy, but he's what you describe as a space taker. So he gets down, he gets the ball where he wants it, he sets good screens, he rolls close to the rim, and he catches the ball. He's so wide that he's able to finish. The other thing he does on multiple occasions was run the floor very aggressively. There's always going to be spacing issues with Jordan on the court. So that's going to be tricky for them to try and work their way through, because Jordan takes a lot of attention, takes up a lot of space down there. So Parks may have to pick his moments, and there'll be times when they probably won't play that much together. And you'll be using a guy like McSwiggan as a stretch 4 probably in that lineup now. But they're going to be a tough out for anybody.
Yeah.
They're not going to, like Matt's teams always are, they're not going to beat themselves. Although I saw Matt's interview on Friday night, and I think he thought they rather tried to beat themselves in the last 15 minutes, in the last 5 minutes. But as they get better, they won't.
Yeah. No, exactly. I spoke to him a couple of weeks ago before the Sky game, and he was saying they're still trying to find what they are and what they've got. And I think you're right. They won't beat themselves down the stretch. Let's shift on to I think this will be a quick one. Bristol Flyers 70, London Lions 99, 10-2, 18-6, 24-8. This game was over before Bristol had double figures on the board.
Yeah, it's kind of a tough one for Bristol because they haven't played.
Yeah.
London have played multiple games, and it's not like they're going to get tired because they've got so many players. And they could sit Justin Robinson down and Chris Tuaya down in this game. But because London are in such a rhythm, having played all those games, and Bristol are basically saying, hello, who are you, after Christmas to all their guys, it was a really difficult shot for them. And London are basically gradually turning into Liggins' team.
Yeah.
They're becoming, in the last 2 years, they've been Robinson's team. But gradually, Liggins, because of the mentality with which he's playing, and the enthusiasm with which he's playing, and the leadership which he's demonstrating, the other guys, and that which is what he had to do. He had to buy in before anybody else.
Yeah.
If he didn't buy in properly, they were going to struggle. But once he's bought in, everybody else is following. And that's it. And I know Dirk Williams is scoring a ton of points, but they're still Liggins' team.
Yeah.
Dirk is
really. He looks like he's really enjoying it as well. He looked like the assists, the defense. He looks like he's really, really enjoying himself with that team.
And now the only thing for Vince basically out of that game is that that's his last game before the cup finals.
Yeah.
So you have to reintegrate Robinson and Tuaya. I don't imagine that will be much of a concern to him, given the way that they've been playing. You prefer to have your guys in, playing every game, but the way that they've been able to mix and match over the past 3 to 4 weeks. They're a train wreck. They're a runaway train at the moment.
Yeah. 10 wins in a row for the Lions. That equals a club record. Let's move. And speaking of records, let's move on to Plymouth against Leicester. Plymouth Raiders 70, Leicester Riders 82, a 31st win in a row. So the Riders now have the head-to-head record outright. And really, it was in the second half, I think it was 41 apiece. Leicester hit a couple of threes, and then Connor got a couple of steals, layups, and suddenly in the space of like 30 seconds, it went from a 1-point game to a 7-point game. And you said last week, once Leicester gets 7-8 up, it's tough.
Yeah, and it's, it was, Leicester did what they had to do. I didn't think Leicester played particularly well. I watched the game back and didn't watch it live, but I watched it back. I thought they were a little bit, certainly, Nelson Henry hardly played. He looked to me like he was hurt. His movement didn't seem to be there. I
thought Fraser was decent though, and he played well. He played well against Plymouth last week as well.
Yeah, he played 30 minutes. Normally those guys 30 minutes, and he played 30, and Nelson Henry played 9.
Yeah.
Also Lee got into foul trouble, and he was ineffective as well. But it comes down to two things. One, Leicester's pressure with the guards and with having Connor and Gino on the court at the same time. And Gino played 38 minutes. So whilst when I say that London is now Liggins' team, Leicester is now Crandall's team.
Yeah.
Because Rob doesn't play people 38 minutes very often, unless it's a must-win game, let alone a whole second half, which he did.
Yeah.
Watch the 3 minutes he didn't play in the first half. It all fell apart very quickly, and he left the 7-0 run, and he was back in the game. But Leicester's guards against Plymouth's guards. Plymouth's Achilles' heels, I'm afraid, are their guards.
Yeah.
There's nothing in mind. I've seen obviously another game tonight, but there is a certain level of guard that you need to compete at the top level with these teams.
Yeah.
And at the moment, I haven't seen that from McGill. I haven't seen that from Porter Bunton. LVC can certainly play a part in that, but you're not going to ask him to do it all.
No.
They stake the house on Lawrence, and Lawrence hasn't played a game.
Yeah.
You can't keep waiting for him. And I'm afraid, the reason, as you say, those two steals came in the backcourt.
Yeah.
In the third quarter, Connor literally, it was pressure, but it was token pressure. It wasn't, we're coming for you.
No.
It was basically just, I think,
it was almost like scenting blood, wasn't it? It was like we're putting pressure on. Oh, actually, we might steal this and get an easy score.
Yeah, I think one time it was Elliot Settons who just got the game, hadn't played many minutes. It was probably a 3, not a ball hand, not a pure ball handler. And it's like, we're on it. And then they still had no way of handling Crandall. No. And what happened was Connor and Zach Jackson started making plays off him.
Yeah.
When they started making plays off him, then the game was done. Plays primarily threes. They got Fraser going a little bit better. They got him the ball a little bit more in the mid post, a little bit higher up rather than under the basket, where he's got a bit more space to work. He's ambidextrous. He can go either side. He likes to have that space either side. You get them the ball on the baseline. Sometimes the baseline shuts him off, and he doesn't quite have that. So they've worked a little bit on that, I think. But 31 wins is crazy.
Yeah,
crazy.
It is. I think 16 of them.
Said a lot about Leicester and a little bit about Plymouth.
Yeah. We should mention as well. Crandall almost had a triple double with 18 points, 17 rebounds, and 8 assists.
Like, I heard you on the TV with Aunt Rosie. I need to see this. I thought exactly the same thing, so I went back and watched. I gave him 16 rebounds, but I don't think we're going to be.
It was almost like it was almost like he just was in the right place all the time. I know you have to be in the right place.
That is interesting, because the reality is the reason he was going to the boards just 1 second earlier than perhaps he would otherwise go, and you'd be able to pick up the kind of the Doncic style uncontested rebounds. Probably 3/4 of his rebounds were uncontested, was because he knew that whoever was shooting the ball for Plymouth wasn't throwing it back to his guy.
Yeah.
So as soon as that guy, if Morcell went into a move, or if Hamilton went into a move, or Chiroma, he knew it was going up.
Yeah.
He was able to take a step off and get there, and then come back and pick the basketball up. And obviously that's a great advantage, because it means he can set the fast break without having to worry about an outlet pass. No, it was a great point guard. It was a great point guard performance. I feared for Plymouth, to be blunt, the first 2 possessions. I think he got to the rim twice.
Yeah.
Uncontested, and you're thinking, what is their plan here? And it didn't get much better, really.
No. Hamilton, somebody texted me this, but Hamilton 7 for 22 against Leicester in those 2 games. And I was looking on Synergy, and Anderson is right up there in terms of points per game, per possession against. I think his opponents are shooting sub 20% from the floor.
It's not just Anderson, because it's Lee as well. They've got those bodies. Even Jackson's 6'7". Yeah. But there is a lot of Plymouth have a lot of isolation. They run a lot of isolation for Hamilton because he's a good isolation scorer. What they don't get is probably as much off their guards as they would like.
Yeah.
What that means is that when you come up against good individual defenders, it becomes harder. So, they have an advantage with Hamilton normally because he's too big for the three, too big for people who are guarding the three, so he goes and posts them up. Yeah. And he's too quick for people who are at the four. Well, the difference is Anderson and Lee aren't like that. They're just as big and just as quick.
Yeah.
So, that and I think we saw it tonight, and we'll get into that with Gordon as well. It takes a special type of defender to be able to guard Hamilton, because if you're either too slow or not big enough, he will kill you.
Yeah, yeah.
He
has been this season.
It has been, yeah. And if you have got those things, and Plymouth need to find another way to get him the ball with an advantage, so he can attack. And that's where their guard play is so flaky. You don't quite know where they're going with that.
Yeah. Let's move on to the TV game Friday night. Sheffield Sharks 84, Newcastle Eagles 92, and this one really swung on the final minute of the first half, with Newcastle scoring 6 points off steals, going what was a close first half, thanks in part to Tuck coming off the bench and doing a great job for the Sharks. Suddenly they go into the locker room, they're down 12, and you think, man, this is over.
It did. There's actually, if you look at it, there was a 10-0 run at the end of the first half. There was another 9-0 run at the end of the third quarter. So they went from 12 to 21 in about a minute and a half at the end of the third quarter, which was led by Edwards. And those runs, you can't survive.
No.
That type of, closing out quarters and closing out halves is probably the most underrated skill, the most underrated significant factor in winning close games is how you close out quarters and how you execute at the end of quarters, because it can be a 10-point swing in a game.
Yeah.
We used to emphasize it tremendously over the two-legged games because we've had, let's say, 8 quarters. You win the last 8. If you close out each quarter right and you win it by 2, you get an extra possession each quarter, then that's maybe 6 or 7 extra possessions over 2 games. What a shot that gives you at winning. And so Sheffield didn't do that. I think the last play of the half, Nick Lewis shot a 3 too early, and long rebound, and Fletcher made a layup at the other end.
Yeah.
The other thing that was interesting about this game was Sheffield are at that point at the moment where they've got a lot of guys, but they're not quite sure. They're not quite sure how to use them, and not quite sure where the best fit is. And they're kind of, they've gone from being Lillard's team, whereby McKnight was running the team and getting the ball to Lillard, and Lillard was attacking, and Nick Lewis might go off. And now they've got Hemsley, and Hemsley is playing the point, but he isn't really a point guard. He's not been a point guard in college. He looks like he could be one of the purest scorers this league has seen in a long time.
20 points off 9 shots.
Of 9 shots. And if you look tonight, there's another game tonight, something similar. The issue is 9 shots. How come he's getting 9 shots? When he's scoring that efficiently, and every shot he shot was a good shot. He wasn't jacking. He was getting to the rim. He seems to be a guy who likes to attack from the wing, likes to see a little bit of space, and once he gets a step, then it's over, because his touch, he's got the floater, his touch around the rim is so good. But if you start him at the point, then it becomes, and you're emphasizing throwing it inside to Bennett Cook, and then Nick Lewis wants his shots, and then Lillard wants his touches as well. Then where does Helmsley get his? And it then magnifies itself, because Atiba played 10 guys in the first quarter, and by the end of the first quarter, he played all 10. And he had all 5 bench guys on at the same time. And that's a line with 2 point guards, because he's got Callum Jones and Joe Campbell. And Ratino is the scorer, and then Marsden and Tuck. Now, the difficulty with that is that neither Campbell or Jones are proven scorers. So you have 2 point guards, neither of whom is a particularly effective scorer at this point, or has demonstrated that this season, and a little bit less athleticism and size inside. So those lineups really hurt Sheffield. Newcastle played 9 guys primarily. They played 10 because Adnican played a little bit. But whenever they had the bench lineup, they have either Edwards or Fletcher on the court. In particular, what's been working for them is when Fletcher goes to sit down, Edwards then handles the basketball, and Edwards becomes the scorer. And they also have Defoe on the court, and Defoe's role is to come in and score. So they have kind of a focus to their play. I didn't see that focus from Sheffield's bench, and that was the unit at the end of the third quarter when the Eagles went up to 21. And then at the beginning of the fourth quarter, Atiba sat them all down and he put his scorers back on the court. And they were playing from behind and they played aggressively and they made a few shots and they got back in the game, but wasn't quite sustainable. So it's one of those things whereby you've got 10 players and the 5 that you are on the court aren't really doing the job. So the temptation is to say, I've got to give these guys a shot at getting better. But if it's not quite the right combinations on the court, then you struggle to get, those last 3 minutes of possessions, it might be 8 possessions in that time. 12-point game becomes a 21-point game.
Yeah.
And no team in the BBL should lose a 21-point lead in a quarter. It shouldn't happen. 12-point lead is anybody's game. 21-point lead, no way. So it's kind of, you want to trust your bench and the coach wants to trust his bench, but is it a situation where you have to shorten your rotation and keep some of the starters on the court with the bench to make sure you don't go through those droughts? And so that's something I'm looking for Sheffield going forward. And for Newcastle, as you say, again, is Edwards and Fletcher, again, they were able to get what they wanted. Fletcher at the start, Defoe then comes in, does his thing, then Edwards takes over, and Gordon's just standing on the baseline, dunking everything.
Yeah.
They took their defence against Leicester into the Sheffield game, and defensively, again, they were better.
And 5 guys in double figures, everybody points all over the shop. It's hard. It's hard when they're.
When if Defoe comes in and scores like that, it is tough. Because he's the one extra thing, the relief on the starters. And then even in the third quarter, he gets Sayers making a couple of shots from the corner, and you must be thinking, where's it coming from?
And blocking, then come down and hit the corner 3.
And he hadn't been involved. He did 3 minutes in the first half and becomes a significant player in the second half.
Yeah.
So as a team, that's when things are. As a coach, that's when you're thinking of, well, which hole do I plug next?
Yeah.
Who am I trying to shut down? But I think Sheffield have to figure out their own team a little bit. I think the primary thing they have to do is that they have to figure out Helmsley, and they have to decide how they're gonna unlock him. And to be honest, I could see, if he wants to keep going with that lineup, I could see advantage in giving Lillard the ball because Lillard is a willing passer. I could see it in running Helmsley and Lewis off screens and letting Lillard play a little bit of point guard. I don't think Helmsley fits that. I think he's restricted in that role.
Let's move into today's games then. Bristol Flyers 73, Worcester Wolves 76. First half was very much the Boutnick and Williams show. I think they had 11 each and missed 1 shot. And then it looked to me like it was going to be reasonably comfortable for the Wolves down the stretch. And then Williams picks up that 4th foul with 8.5 minutes to go. They were up 8 at that point. He sits down. They didn't bring him back till a minute to go, which I thought was slightly longer than.
I noticed that, yeah.
To me, it was. I was sitting there thinking, "Oh, I might bring Williams back now with 2 minutes to go, 3 minutes to go." But he took it. And to be fair, Josh Wiltshire, great to see him back. Made some plays down the stretch for them. Got it right back, but not quite all the way back. And then Williams comes back on court, and they won it with some free throws at the end.
They did, and also, I had a lot of faith in those guys because what you say Bigham for. Normally you kind of the 3-minute mark is when you're looking at it, and
particularly as the scoreboard is getting closer.
I would actually always kind of want to go a bit earlier because you're worried that you might get a minute and a half without a sub.
Yeah.
Where suddenly you've got him at the bench at the 3-minute mark. If he doesn't get into the 1 minute mark, and you don't out, but the proof of the pudding is in the eating, and they won. A couple of things. Yes, great to see Josh Wiltshire back. That will change that team considerably, albeit they've now kind of got to work out what they do with Teddy, whether Teddy is off the ball or on the ball or whatever, because he's also one of their best 5 players. So does he some kind of
and also if they move Teddy across, what do they do with Mockford?
Well, Mockford, I like Ben playing at the 3. Actually, I really the 3 for GB. I think he's just a shooter coming off screens and a guy you can't leave alone, who spaces the court, who you can get going in a hurry at the right time. But he's not going to create for others primarily. He's going to create for himself.
Yeah.
I think that rule is almost best if you play that with a two guard like that.
Yeah.
Then you're basically leaving all the creativity to one guy, and that's a little bit hard.
Yeah.
All the creativity for the team, but they've got to figure that out. Also, this is the thing with fouls, because we say that about John Williams, but Teddy Okafor fouled out with 50 seconds to go, and Andreas had to come back with Josh. But the problem is he had to come back with Josh for defensive possession. And Josh is an offensive maestro. He's not a particularly physical defensive presence, particularly not having played for the best part of 9 months. And of course, the first thing that happens with a minute to go, a 1-point game, is that Brandon Anderson dribbles him down to the foul line and turns around and shoots a foul line jump shot, clear as you like, and that makes it a 3-point game. And on that, on those small things, does a game change? Does a result change? Yeah. Because if Teddy is still in the game, Anderson doesn't get that. Yeah. If Andreas switches up matchups, Anderson doesn't get that. Yeah. But he sees someone, he doesn't know Will Shipley, never played against him, he's new to the league, but he sees someone who's smaller than him. Yeah. And he immediately goes to his move and he makes that shot. Baker, we don't know how good Baker is, because he got refed out 4 fouls in it. Welcome to the BBL. It wouldn't laugh so much, but it's everybody. It happens to everybody. Every new American player in this league. We always used to try and get it over and done with it pre-season. Yeah. We were getting fouled out in pre-season, so we could at least believe us when we told them that it was a bit different. Well, you can't do that if you sign a guy mid-season. So he will assist Bristol, I think.
But again, they've got 2 guys coming in now, and they have to sort of shift everying about to make that fit.
Around. And how does that impact Lockett? Because Lockett is a handful. I've always liked playing small. I always liked, for whatever reason, it's just been the way I look at it. And Lockett could potentially be a small ball for. Yeah. Because I think he would be an unbelievable tough cover for most of the guys in this league. If you play him at the 3, then that's fine as well. You can play bigger, but then you have a little bit less spacing. Wilshere depends on spacing. Wilshere's all about spacing. He's a little guy. He manoeuvres the court well. He manoeuvres the spacing well. He runs the screen and roll as well as anybody in the league. But everybody has to be in the right place. And they're going to have difficulties, I think, with that and Edozie and Delpesh on the game at the same time. It's going to make things a little bit harder for Josh. To run that screen and roll than it will be if only one of them's in the game and you've got a shooter stood in the corner. But they're all the decisions that ultimately Andreas has to make. He's got a lot of guys now, so he's going to have to figure that out next couple of weeks. He's got a couple of weeks to do it, I think, but they need to play some games.
They do. Bristol with 14 offensive rebounds, which shows you how badly they shot the ball.
That's the positive of having the big guys in the game.
Yeah. But you'd much rather have Bristol shooting numbers than offensive rebounding numbers as a result, because the ball's going in. Let's move on to I said this, was it last week or the week before? Glasgow can beat you 65-63. Well, they beat Sheffield 65-54 today. The interesting thing I think on this, right at the starting lineup, Murray and Pondo, Keeling, Delph and Queddy. So Gareth starting himself. And I, okay, it's 8-8 at the end of the first quarter, but I just feel they look better with that lineup personally.
Yeah, well, they set the tone. I mean, I don't want to be Nostradamus, but 3 weeks ago, I said that they had their four best guys, 4 of their best players were off the bench. Yeah. Today, 3 of those guys were starting. It was only Johnny Bunyan. Of the guys that I mentioned, it was only Johnny Bunyan. And you add in Delph as well. And that then adds the ability to bring Jack Domney off the bench, which means he's not going to get early foul trouble.
No. Still got foul trouble, but
he still gets in foul trouble. But you can live with that because he's playing with energy. Referee at the beginning of the game, it's easier to pick up fouls at the beginning of the game than it is in the middle of the game, because the refs will be setting a tone at the beginning of the game for the way they want to be played. So the advantage of having a foul-prone guy coming off the bench is that unless he does something particularly stupid, as soon as he gets in the game, the refs are going to let a little bit more go 7 or 8 minutes into a game than they are maybe the first 2 or 3 plays. And bringing him off the bench, and he had 14 of their 26 points in the first half, because he's showing a tremendous and impressive dexterity around the rim, ability to finish on the roll. And that really gives them a competitive two-headed centre. And the reality is that due to his youthfulness, he is going to be foul prone. He may only play 18 to 20 minutes a game. But if Gareth's getting 14 or 16 points over 20 minutes,
today he played 20 minutes and had 18 and 5. And that was the other thing. Sheffield got almost nothing really out of the bench. Rocks had 29 points off the bench, despite the fact that, as we said, they had the better players in the starting lineup.
Yeah, and they did set a tone. I think that, that they set a tone. They were competitive from the outset. I watched the game closely to see, because I was interested in Sheffield as well, to see how Sheffield would react. Sheffield had kind of the same problems that they had on Friday night, certainly in relation to their bench. But I think how many times did Helmsley shoot the ball? Maybe 7 or 8 in the game. He certainly hadn't shot the ball much at half time. And Nick Lewis made a few shots. Lillard's body language concerns me, both on Friday and tonight. It's always the dog months of the year, January and February in the BBL, because all the kind of the newness and the freshness is worn off, and everybody's getting used to playing in Scotland in -12 and that type of thing, and in Yorkshire, wherever, and homesickness can sit in, and all sorts of things can click in. It's magnified 100 times by the pandemic, because the guys don't get to go out. So there will be mental health issues with every player in this league, particularly the ones who are away from home, and which I hope all the coaches are actually looking out for. But they just don't. They're not right, Sheffield. They don't have they're getting towards kind of taking turns. They haven't really got a point guard who's primary. They've got guys who can run plays, but they haven't got anybody who's creating for somebody else. They can run the plays to get the ball to somebody else, but making a play off the dribble to throw it to somebody else is different, and that's not happening as regularly. So guys having to make shots one-on-one, and that can be tough. In Glasgow, we're ready to play, and I think obviously the other thing is Sheffield went up there and beat them by 20 last time, and Nick Lewis had 30 points. And you never want to play a team soon after you've beaten them by 20.
The other thing is, if I remember rightly, they sort of pulled away from them in the second half. So it's almost like, well, it doesn't matter. At some point, we'll turn it on and pull away.
And the other thing is, Glasgow now are better, because they had 26 points in the first half, and then Keeling goes off for 13 points in the third quarter. Now, 3-4 weeks ago, they didn't have Keeling to do that. They were still fighting for points. They were fighting for offense the whole game, and eventually that wears you down. Now they're not. They are better with. I mean, look, if Gareth Murray is playing twice as many minutes as Fraser Malcolm, then Glasgow are going to be better. And that's not a knock on Fraser Malcolm. It's just that Gareth Murray is a more experienced, better player at this point in his career. So having him play the whole first quarter, part of the second quarter, I think is the way forward for them. And the guys will actually, conversely, they'll be happy with that, because all players know players in those games. So they will know that why he's playing. And if they don't know why he's playing, then they won't be there long.
Exactly.
So the players, I think that's the type of leadership that those guys would like. And they've had a great win, and they were whooping it up on the bench, and they've done it on the basis of their defense. And they've just played harder. I think probably harder than Sheffield at the end of the day. But as I say, it comes down to Helmsley. Helmsley is a scorer. He's a shooter who didn't shoot. I don't think he shot a 3. He didn't shoot a 3 in the probably 3.5 quarters I saw. And I'm thinking, this guy is as smooth as anybody in this league, and they haven't unlocked him yet. And I think they're going to have to find a way.
Well, we'll park that one, other than to note that it was the worst 3-point shooting game in 7 years in the British Basketball League, with a combined 2 of 25. Oh, and a scoregami as well, which always keeps me happy. So let's move on to Cheshire 92, Surrey 87. Surrey leading by 10 going into the fourth quarter. Mike McCall goes off with 3 threes in the blink of an eye. They take the lead, and then you get the lane violation at the end, which allowed a retake free throw, and they get an offensive rebound out of it instead of having a shot to tie. Knicks, who'd been 0 of 5 in games of 6 points or fewer, finally win a close game.
Yeah, I think the key is what you've said there. They've been in close games. Surrey haven't played for a while. They look like a team that has forgotten how to win. That's easy to think. It's a bit trite to say that because they haven't won many games.
Yeah.
So you think that's because they've forgotten how to win. Maybe it's because they're just not making enough plays. But they should have won that game.
They should have won the game.
They should have won that game. Jimbo Lowe goes out in the third quarter. He's hurt, which actually possibly might have helped them because it meant that they could play small. And Jalen Hayes has a game because
second best scoring game in his BBL career.
Yeah, so he goes off, but they come. You're up 10 against basically an undermanned, worn down Cheshire team at the beginning of the fourth quarter. You should not. You cannot lose that game. And what happened was, you're absolutely right. Mike McCall made 3 Mike McCall shots, and an 8-point deficit became a 1-point lead. And I was tearing my hair out watching it because I'm looking at Cheshire and I'm thinking, where is their offense coming from? Jalen Hayes is out on his feet. He has 30 points. Karen Ross has brought the ball up and down the court the whole time. They've got William, who is erratic. He can score, but he's also a little bit erratic. And if he's shooting 20 feet jump shots, you're going to live. And you've got Kyle Carey, who's hardly played. Well, the scoring's going to come from McCall. It's his turn. Yeah. And for him to get 3 shots, for him to catch the ball, to step to the right of a screen, cross over like he's done for his 2 years in the league, and drain 3 shots in a row with people just thinking, I'm just putting your hand up, it's good D. In those circumstances, it's not. They had to get on top of him. They had to make him drive. He's not the biggest guy. They had to make him go into traffic. The one way they could not get beat was by him shooting those threes on the scouting report, and they got beat that way. Yeah. And that changed the momentum of the basketball game. There's always 2 minutes in a game like that where the game is being played, where the players are in, everybody's locked in, and that was those 2 minutes. From that moment on, make a play here or a play there. Cheshire believed they could win. They had the swagger, they had the strut. Paul knew, I've got it. Everybody's energized, and the Surrey guys are on the bench thinking, here we go again. Yeah. So it's little things. It's locking into a scouting report at that time. And he might get 1. He shouldn't get 2. He absolutely cannot get 3. Doesn't matter if it's the hardest shot in the world. If he's throwing it from behind his head, that is his shot. And he's got that shot, and there was a way to take the ball out of his hands, or double him on the screen, or do something, and they didn't do it. So Cheshire won the game because they took the game away. Credit to them. I'm kind of happy for them because they played some games. And they've not quit, and they're still there battling and fighting away. Surrey need to play some games quickly. They are going to be better with Hicks in the team. Casho and Hicks
off the bench today.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure he'll be on the bench for much longer. Casho and Hicks are a pretty potent backcourt, but their defense players are having career nights against them. And, as you say, Jalen Hayes, Mike McCall, 25. That's more than he's had all season. And eventually, you're not going to win games that way. The 2 different teams, sorry, as well. They played 5 when Ryan Richards is playing. They go through him. Everything goes through Ryan Richards. And everybody else kind of stands around a little bit. And then when he's not playing, they play a lot faster. They play 5 out, spread the floor. And so they're a little bit schizophrenic as a team that way. But again, they need games to work that through, to work out exactly what that rotation is. And they need to be more locked in defensively.
Yeah. As you say, please for Ben in the Knicks, having been in so many close games and just not got over the line for whatever reason.
You said, you're right about that, because that defeat on Friday night is a gutter. It goes right in, and you come back from 15 down. Yeah, and it just pulls you out. It's like basketball can be the greatest game, it can be the worst game on the bench. It's one of those ones that absolutely just takes you. So to be down 10, the guys could have not gone through the motions, but they could have played the game out. Yeah. From McCall particularly to come and say, no, not tonight. I've had enough of this. We're not losing tonight. I'm going to take that bodes well for them going forward.
Right, and finally, the last game of the evening, the closest game, Newcastle Eagles 77, Plymouth Raiders 76, which I think was the exact same score when they met in Plymouth, just the other way round. I was watching this game. I saw Newcastle hit 2 threes, go up 9 with, I think it was about 5-6 minutes to go, and I thought, oh, that's it. I'll go and get ready for this. And then suddenly Raiders get 15 of the next 16 points, and from 76-72, you think they've got to win the game from there.
Yeah, it was a crazy game. I'm not sure how Plymouth lost. I thought they played harder than Newcastle. I thought they were more locked in than Newcastle. I thought Newcastle in transition in particular were very loose with the basketball. They attempted some shots that, 1-on-3 transition breaks, which were not wise. They weren't particularly smart. They over individualized at times. And, Plymouth basically did a number on them on the glass, particularly on the offensive glass. Morcell got to the rim, Hamilton got to the rim, Neighbour got tip-ins, or Cherubia got tip-ins. But Newcastle have shot makers and they have players. They have players who can get them out of that. So that's the first thing that, Plymouth should have won that basketball game. Newcastle were running on fumes, I thought, in the fourth quarter. They've played away on Tuesday in a high-pressure game. They played away on Friday in another high-pressure game because it's on Sky. So the players get emotionally invested in that. You heard all the talking that was going on Friday night with Tucker and Defoe and all that stuff going on. So there's that. And then you come down, and then suddenly you're playing again on Sunday against a physical talented team. And I thought the fourth quarter, as I say, they ran on empty, both physically and mentally in particular. I'm sure that if Ian has it back, he would have preferred to get Fletcher more rest, because he didn't get him any rest in the second half. Played 20 minutes, played 37 minutes in the game, which is more than he's been playing.
Yeah.
I know he can play 37 minutes.
He can,
I played 37 minutes in every game when I was on the bench. He didn't thank me for it.
No, he's told me.
Yeah. Fletch, just another minute.
Yeah.
But the third game of that week.
Yeah.
And Ian's done a great job this year of actually managing his minutes better, of reducing them, and that kind of got away from him today. And I thought he was tired at the end of the game. But
then it comes down to 3 plays at the end. Edwards hits the 3, and then Defoe with the defensive steal makes 2 free throws, and then the final play, the block at the end. Obviously, Paul was very unhappy with it, and I've watched it back, and it's tough from a camera angle way out there. The block looks clean. I suppose the question is whether Defoe's doing anything underneath, but that's one that referees don't like to call on the buzzer.
I mean, just before we get to that, you're right. There were a number of plays in the game. Edwards' 3 is critical, not just because he made a 3, but because he made it within 4 seconds of the inbound.
Yeah.
They had the timeout with 35 seconds. Because he makes it with 31 seconds on the clock, that means Newcastle can play defense. They don't have to foul. And because as a coach, you're always looking to get into the situation whereby foul shots will win it for you.
Yeah.
You'd end up looking at the clock. If there was 60 seconds left and you had the ball with up 4, in my head, I'm thinking, well, even if we hold the basketball for 24 seconds and if we miss, if they score, they're still going to have to foul us.
Yeah.
And once we get into the foul shots game, ultimately it's up to the guys. You've got to make them. If they don't make them, you can't complain.
Yeah.
But as a coach, what you can do is get your team to the foul shot game, whereby they have to foul. And by getting that 3, and obviously Cortez is Edwards being as clutch as he is, knocking it down.
Yeah.
That meant they could play defense. But this comes down to Plymouth's guards again. This is what I'm saying. I'm not convinced. Now, this is, crunch time. Okay. If Defoe switches onto you on a screen, you should be, you as an American guard in this league, Ricky McGill has to look at him and score. Or has to look at him and make a play.
Yeah.
What cannot happen is for Defoe to take the ball off him.
Yeah.
Put it there. I love Darius. Darius, obviously Darius is probably the player I've had the most contact with. But we never wanted him to be in too much space defending.
No.
Because he had a propensity to commit fouls. But he knows when to make plays. He knows when the game is on the line.
Yeah.
And to allow that to happen, to allow that turnover there, the one thing that couldn't happen.
Yeah.
The 7-second differential in the shot clock.
Yeah.
If get a shot up and get an offensive rebound, the game is basically over.
Yeah.
And we've got 15 offensive rebounds already. That's not a long shot.
No.
If they make it, then it's a 3-point game with 5 seconds left. Good luck, Newcastle.
Yeah.
But what you can't do is turn the basketball over.
Well, even if they don't make it, they have a chance defensively. Whereas turning the ball over there, it's a 2-on-1 break.
Yeah, it is. And then to be fair, again, and this is where you have to give Darius an enormous amount of credit, knocking down his 2 foul shots.
Yeah.
Because he's 6'8". I think he's shooting 83%, which is a Chara-esque at the
yeah,
line.
It is. Yeah.
But it's even then, that's all right. But to do it at the end of the game, the guards are meant to shoot the foul shots at the end of the game.
Oh yeah.
For your big guy just to step up and just to knock them down like nothing is going on.
Yeah.
That is major. The last play, I watched it the first time I saw it. I thought it was clean, and I begin to watch these games a bit more dispassionately now. So I don't think I'm biased on it.
Yeah.
Trying not to be biased on it. That was the first time watching it back. I still wouldn't have called a foul on it.
Yeah.
As you say, maybe Defoe is there, but he's pretty straight up.
Yeah.
And also, he's got a Plymouth guy there holding on to him as well.
Yeah.
And, Ashley is basically driving into somewhere where there is no space.
Yeah.
As a referee, what you're looking for is for the offensive player to get his shoulder past the defensive player. So the defensive player has to make contact with him from the side. Or as you see on the television, the call where the defensive player is not straight up, where he's in front. I don't see any ref could call him not straight up on Defoe because of the fact that Gordon is shielding him.
Yeah.
As he's driving. And in relation to the block, Gordon just got up higher.
Yeah.
The other way that you get a call is if you rise up to shoot the ball and the defensive player is kind of underneath you and he hits you on the arm. Or even if he hits you kind of across the level of the ball. So it might be, to hit the ball, you've got to hit the arm.
Yeah.
Gordon got above him, and from my perspective, he actually jammed down on the ball.
Yeah.
And that's when you don't get a call.
No.
Because there's no arm to hit. You're hitting the top of the ball instead. So I don't have that much sympathy on that play. I think they're very frustrated. I understand why it's a game they should have won in the 3-7.
3-7.
Probably
as many defeats as anybody in the league.
Yeah, probably wouldn't. And that really is, it's tough given how tough they played in that game. But you have to have space on the court at the end of the game. You want a foul call, there has to be space, and there was no space.
No.
And he put his head down and he went straight into a morass of players. And unless, as a ref, I'm not calling that unless I see something blatant, a blatant hit on the arm or something like that. I think I'd be interested to see Newcastle. I mean, again, Leicester didn't play today. They played 9 players. Adam Eakin struggled a little bit. I'm not sure how much he'll play in the cup final. I'm a little bit worried about their bench unit, particularly when they have Matthew Sayers and Adam Eakin in the game at the same time. That to me is a lineup which might struggle in the cup final against London. So it'll be interesting to see if the rotation gets shortened a little bit. But overall, I mean, they've had an awesome week. They won the cup semi-final, they won in Sheffield, and they beaten Plymouth.
Yeah.
So you can't go past the results. Plymouth, you got to get Morcell helps Plymouth a lot because he gives them something at the rim, but isn't Hamilton. He makes them a really tough offensive rebounding team. The thing with Mike is he's constantly puts the defense under pressure. He's constantly getting in there. He's making plays. He's making shots. He's active. He's physical, and all those things. So that he helps them a lot. But Porter Button tonight was 0 of 6 in 15 minutes. For 0 points. McGill, I think 9 points and 4 assists in 30 odd minutes. They need more production out of that. And obviously they can wait for Lawrence, but Lawrence may not come.
Yeah. Well, this time next week, we will be breaking down a cup final. So that's something exciting to look forward as Newcastle. Newcastle take on the London Lions. But it's been a good weekend of basketball. I've thoroughly enjoyed watching all the games, and we've come to the end of it. So we will park it there for this week.
Actually, just one point on that. The BBL game's tipping up at 3 o'clock, 3:30, 5 o'clock.
Yeah. big tick in the box.
Please put a memo in, please, that this is the way it needs to be. You know, behind closed doors on a Friday night, 6 o'clock, 6:30, 7 o'clock, 7:30, please, so we can all, so people who are paying to get the BBL player can watch the finality of the games. Yeah. Because I can't watch 2 games at the same time.
Yeah.
I can't.
Yeah, you need to be better at multitasking, Dave.
Because you can watch part of them.
Commentary in different ears, it's perfect.
Yeah, you can't focus on them. You can't, because you miss stuff. You know what I mean? So you can watch them. You watch the stories unfold, but you can't quite see why those stories are unfolding, or what the coaches are going through and all that.
No co-signing on the multiple tip-off times here. So Dave and I will be back next Sunday to break down the cup final and everything else that goes on this week in the British Basketball League. So we will see you then. But for now, goodbye.